dase koruna kori Ohi Vaishnava Thakura Doyada Shagada Idase Koruna Kori Iya Pada Jaya Shatahe Amaya Tomada Chodana Dhori Tomada Chodana Dhori Diya Pada Jaya Shatahe Amaya Tomada Chodana Dodi Tomada Chodana Dodi Chaya Bhegadami Chaya Dosha Shadi Chaya Guna Deho Dashe Chaya Bhegadami Chaya Dosha Shadi Chaya Guna Deho Dashe Chaya Shata Shanga Deho e Amare Shangera Ashe Boshe Che Shangera Ashe Chaya Shata Shanga Deho e amare boshe che shongera ashe Ekaki ama nahi paya bala Harinama Sankirtane Ekaki ama nahi paya bala Harinama Sankirtane Tumi kripa kori Shraddha bindu diya deho Krishna nama dhane Shraddha bindu diya nama dhane Tumi kripa kori Shraddha bindu diya deho Krishna nama dhane Deha Krishna Nama Dhane Vaishnava Thakura Doyada Shagada Iddashe Koruna Kori Krishna said, Krishna said, Tomara Dite Paro Tomara Shakati Ache Krishna Dite Paro Tomara Krishna se tomara, Krishna dite paro, tomara shakati ache. Tomara shakati ache. Amito kongala. Krishna Krishna boli doi taba pache pache Amito Ganga Amito Kongala Krishna Krishna boli doi toba pache pache doi toba pache pache Vaishnava Thakura Doyada Shagada Iddashe Koruna Kori Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Ajayam Vishnu Paramhamsa Parivrajaka Acharya Ashtatar Susamar Srila Abhacharna Ravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki, Ishkan Pratishthat Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki, Shamaveta Gaud Bhakta Vrinda ki, Sri Sri Nitai Gauda Shitanath Premanandi Hari Hari Boom. Vande Aham Shri Guru Shri Juta Pada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shastri Rupam Shaguru Jatam Shahagana Raganatam Vitam Tang Shajivam Shadvaitam Shavadutam Parijana Shaitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Shahagana Lalita Shibishakang Vitangscha Mantra Guru Ajokta Shikha Guru Ganta Chorane Age Kore Abandon Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Śrīmad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Shashati Deve Gaudavani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shandavani Prashchitta Deshatanane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Bhashri Gaud Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Prabhupada's inclination toward the independence movement led by Gandhi was more so, it wasn't that Srila Prabhupada was particularly interested in politics, wasn't very interested in politics. He was attracted to Gandhi because of his character. Yeah, Gandhi, vegetarian. There are four principles Gandhi was following. So what else was there in the society? There was a spiritual... At that time he hadn't met Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So he was somewhat considered affiliated. He wore the khadi cloth. He neglected to accept the degree from Scottish Church College. In protest, as many other students. Subhash Chandra Bose, the great independence leader, was in the same college as Prabhupada, a year ahead. He was known to Prabhupada. Prabhupada knew him, Subhash Chandra. And he also had some Vedic inclination and values, Subhash Chandra Bose also. So Prabhupada was somewhat inclined. Now, that evening when Narendra Malik, actually in Kolkata this year, Rath Yatra, I was talking Prabhupada's pastimes in the programs, Kolkata Rath Yatra. Talking about the Maliks. The Maliks were the proprietor, they're actually a very wealthy family. Prabhupada quoted that, Suchinam Śrīmatam Gehe. He said, Śrīmatam Gehe, the Maliks were very wealthy. They owned the whole of that area of Harrison Road, and now MG Road. You can go and visit. They owned the whole area, all the shops. And they were renting. Prabhupada was father. Gaur Mohande was renting there. So Narendra Malik, close friend of Prabhupada, also Vaishnava. He was encouraging Prabhupada, come, there's a great sadhu. Come and see Prabhupada. Prabhupada wasn't so inclined. He had experience of cheating sadhus. Gaur Mohande every day would feed at least 4 sadhus. Can you imagine? I mean, we could speak for hours on the aristocratic and advanced consciousness of Gaur Mohande. And we won't go into that today. But Who's doing that these days in the cities in India? Opening the door and feeding 4 sadhus. The sadhus cannot come. There's the security down there in the apartment block. So how broad-minded was Prabhupada's father? That's a whole nother, maybe another day. Prabhupada's father, Gurmohan Day, childhood pastimes. Today, graduation and beyond. Narendra Malik, come see, Prabhupada, not so inclined. And you can go and visit Ultadanga Road. Who's visited Ultadanga Road? Only a handful. Only a handful have visited. You walk up the steps. It's just like it was when Prabhupada was there. You walk up the steps. You can imagine Prabhupada walking onto the balcony, walking onto the roof, seeing Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur there. So Prabhupada, because he was born in Vaishnav culture and he saw the sannyasi and with tilak, he dandavat pranam. Now before Prabhupada even could even take his seat, before he even was able to sit, Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur seeing Prabhupada, and Narendra Malik was seeing Prabhupada, and immediately before Prabhupada even took his seat, he said, "You're an educated young man. You should preach Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message in English language all over the world." And the Prabhupada was shocked. He was astonished. How could someone be so bold to order me to give my life on the first meeting, without any formalities, without any introduction, get to know the person? Can you imagine? What does that tell us about Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur? That tells us that he was obsessed with the prediction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was obsessed. He was always thinking of it. And any opportunity, any slightest opportunity, any chance, he would immediately seize to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world in English language. He was always thinking about that. And therefore, at the slightest opportunity, you could say, and a gentleman just came, Prabhupada with moustache, young man, obviously a Gandhi follower, educated man, aristocrat, Bengali in Kolkata. Bengali was the jewel of the empire, the jewel of the East. You go to Kolkata now, you think, oh, Prabhupada, what a place. 120 years ago, Kolkata was not like it is now. There were no shacks and tea stalls on the streets. It was all broad boulevards, cleaned every day. The British were there, many foreigners, many Europeans were living in Kolkata, the second most important city of the British Empire. Second most important city of the British, so wealthy, so aristocratic. Prabhupada was in the high society, educated Bengalis, and a most prestigious, and Prabhupada was an arts graduate. What a character, what an aristocrat. Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, so bold, immediately. Prabhupada was shocked. And Prabhupada offered a challenge. Prabhupada offered a challenge. Not that he was thinking in a negative way, but just in terms of, well, Prabhupada was an educated man. He was an educated man, and he'd learned the standards of a British education. You don't just accept anything blindly. Everything has to be thoroughly with logic. Prabhupada studied logic, Greek logic. He knew all the terms, ascending Greek logic. So Prabhupada, he questioned, well, how is it the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would be accepted? India is still a occupied country. And first we have to get independence. We have to get the liberation from the foreign control. And otherwise, who will listen to the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, we don't need to wait for a political circumstance. That's insignificant. Ahoituki apratiyata. Ahoituki apratiyata. There's no consideration. There's no circumstances that can cause us to give up, cause us to stop performing Bhagavad Bhakti. There's no external circumstances that can prevent the performance of Bhagavad Bhakti. Even one can perform in the mind, if the circumstances are unsuitable. One can perform. There's no situation. So Mahaprabhu, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he could appear anywhere, any place, any time. He appeared in Bengal. It was under the rule of the foreign invaders. The Mughals, they were controlling Bengal. and they were restraining the performance of Sankirtan. That doesn't matter. Mahaprabhu came, distributing freely. So Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he spoke, Prabhupada was astonished. Immediately he lost all interest in Gandhi's movement. He lost all interest. What better example can we find of Labhamatra Sadhu Sangha Sarva Siddhi Hoy? A moment, Labhamatra, a moment. Lava, it's an 11th of the second. Labhamatra Sadhu Sangha, association with a sadhu. Sarva Siddhi Hoy, all perfection can be there. It's an example of that. One moment. Prabhupada changed, his whole direction in life changed. Of course, Prabhupada's position, of course, we can only imagine how special and how intimately connected Prabhupada is to Krishna as his Nitya Siddha, eternal associate. However, still, even the Mahabhagavatas, the Nitya Siddhas, they're still somewhat, the circumstances that they're in affects their behavior, like Rupa and Sanatan. They would change their names to Dabir Kash and Shakara Malik. They wore the dress of the Muslims. When Sanatan Goswami arrived in Varanasi and Mahaprabhu sent Chandrasekhar outside, is there a mendicant, a Vaishnava mendicant? He's looking, no Vaishnava mendicant here. Comes back, tells Mahaprabhu, and Mahaprabhu says, anybody there? He says, oh, there's just a kafir, a Muslim mendicant. Sanatan Goswami assumed the dress, assumed the name. Nicha jati, nicha jati, nicha shangi potit odhom. I'm associating with low people, I'm born in the low class, I'm wasted my life. Kubishai kupe, goinanu jonom. Kubishai kupe. And this is, Prabhupada, you read those purports. Prabhupada is saying even such exalted souls can be affected. So Prabhupada was, he changed as a result of it's not that, it didn't have a big effect on him. Prabhupada was not thinking about spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world before meeting Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. But then that became the mission of his life. So that one meeting, and he was there for the evening. And Prabhupada was thinking at that time, he was thinking, actually, I would like to have joined the movement full time at that moment. I'd like to have joined the movement full time. Sisi Radha Madhav ki, Shishi Nitai Goshundo ki, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki. Prabhupada was thinking he would have joined, but he was already in the household of life. He already had a son. But Prabhupada said that he accepted Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur as his spiritual master at that moment. He accepted as his spiritual master. So because Prabhupada had not accepted his degree, so then he was, you could say, a free agent. The degree was a valuable thing at that time. It would have given one a lot of opportunity for different employment opportunities in the government, etc. But Prabhupada didn't accept the degree. So then this doctor, Kartik Bose, he's the same doctor that when Prabhupada was 1.5 years old, he had typhoid. And he said he has to have chicken broth. Kartik Bose was the family doctor. And Gaur Mohan say, impossible, we're Vaishnavas, we never even consider such things. What to think of cooking chicken in the kitchen. Prabhupada's mother also, Rajani, born in pure Vaishnava families for many generations. They've never known these things, tea, coffee, eggs, cha, and fish, which is extraordinary in Bengali society. So they were very elevated dynasties and family lines, both Prabhupada's mother and Prabhupada's father. Cooking chicken in the kitchen, not at all possible. And the child will die, Kartik Bose said, the child will die. Gaur Mohan, what to do? Just like now, you can't believe, Prabhupada said, never take me to the hospital. It's an industry, they make money, however they can. I'll tell you this, tell you that. Take and empty your pockets. So he said the child will die. So okay, I will cook the chicken broth in my kitchen and bring it in a jar, and brings it. And then they fed it to Prabhupada. Prabhupada immediately vomited Oh, this will not do. We'll have to think of something else. Eventually, Prabhupada was cured of the typhoid. So that same doctor, so he was very close to Gaur Mohan Dey. From the childhood, he knew Prabhupada, the family doctor. Prabhupada's mother left her body when he was about 15, 16 years old. So Prabhupada was there with his father, and he was married, and his family, they're all together. So then Prabhupada, Gaur Mohan Dey, he discussed with Kartik Bose. Kartik Bose said he was able to give Prabhupada a position as manager of his chemical laboratory in Kolkata. So Prabhupada accepted that as a highly posted position, and even the others who had been in the company for many years, they were unhappy by that who is this new man? And Kartik Bose said, he's just like my son. He's just, and I can trust him. Sometimes he has to sign checks of $40,000 or 40,000 rupees. That's a lot of money 100 years ago, 40,000 rupees. Even now it's a lot of money. Prabhupada was working in there as the manager of Kartik Bose's chemical factory in Kolkata. And Prabhupada's meditating on the experience that he had with Sanatana Saraswati Thakur, and then after some time Prabhupada began to think, well, I'm not a resident of the temple, mott, a brahmachari or a sannyasi, but I want to fulfill the order of my guru to spread Krishna consciousness in English language. So how to do that? Well, let me make money, and then I can support, financially I can support the mission. So Prabhupada thought, well, I'm not going to make that much money here in the managerial post, although it's a lot of people are okay with that because it's steady, regular, and they get a job and they can enjoy their life and they go regular. But it's not enough to become very wealthy. So Prabhupada thought, well, let me start my own business. And Prabhupada discussed it with Kartik Bose. He discussed it, and Kartik Bose suggested, become my agent, become a salesperson for all of North India. So then Prabhupada agreed. So then Prabhupada became the agent. He would travel and he would sell the products of Kartik Bose, and he would acquire clients. I assume that's you get percentage of the sales. So you can, Prabhupada, he was a salesman. Prabhupada would travel. And Prabhupada said he liked that lifestyle. His family were there in his family there at that time, that would have been in Harrison Road still, they're renting that property. You know that Prabhupada never purchased a property, never purchased a home. Prabhupada never purchased a home. Nor did Gaur Mohan Dey. Gaur Mohan Dey never lived, they never owned a property, never owned a house. And Prabhupada also never, he always rented. I was in Vrindavan, Gargamuni Prabhu, perhaps you know him, a very special devotee, a very dear servant of Srila Prabhupada, Gargamuni Prabhu. Two brothers, Brahmananda and Gargamuni, two sannyasis. Character, Gargamuni. And he was the original preacher to go to Bangladesh in 1971. I interviewed him on 2 occasions for an hour and a half on all of the experiences that he had in the early days in Bangladesh. You can hear that interview if you like. Many amazing things. And I was sitting with him and I said, oh, this is your apartment. He was in the MVT. I think it was MVT or... No, it was another one. Krishna Residency, around the corner. Krishna Residency. I said, this is your apartment? He said, oh, no. He said, no. I said, no. He said, no, I'm renting, or like some they have he has an arrangement there. He said, no. He was kind of, no. He said, Prabhupada told me never to purchase a property. Yeah, Prabhupada told me, he said, Prabhupada told me never to purchase a property. He said, because at the time of death, you may think of that, your attachment. Yeah. And you'll come back, just to come back to your home. Maybe not in the human form of life. But, so isn't that amazing? We didn't know that. Prabhupada never purchased a property. And Prabhupada, for his family, as a grihastha. So then Prabhupada was traveling and then selling that. And then Prabhupada thought about relocating to a better city for business prospects. So at that time, North India, Prayagraj. Then it was called Allahabad. So Prabhupada moved his family So therefore, for that period, after first meeting Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the headquarters of the Gaudiya Math was in Ultadanga Road. That's why it's such a special place, actually. Most of the preaching of the Gaudiya Math was achieved when Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was residing in that little room there in Ultadanga Road. It's so many of the great progress and opening the temple, 64 mats, it was there. And Bagh Bazar temple was acquired in 1933. And Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur left in 1935. So only a couple of years in Bagh Bazar. And also then he was not so happy. He said the leading sannyasis are all arguing over who will get which room. Bagh Bazar. Most of the preaching was there in the Ultadanga. And that's in ISKCON. We have that ISKCON. It's such a wonderful... It took decades. Even for many decades, Gaudiya Math were trying to get that, Ultadanga. They couldn't get that. You can hear the story. As a whole level should write a book about how they acquired that. They had to go in disguise and dress up and pretend to be different type of people to try to influence the people who were there to move out. It's the whole story, the devotees, how they got that place. So then in Prayag, Prabhupada was there. He wasn't, Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur headquarters were in Kolkata, and most of the preaching in Bengal, Orissa, that area. So they weren't there. So, however, Prabhupada was still connected. He had books of Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and he was still absorbed in the connection with him. Prabhupada, he had a son. Is that Prayagraj? I think the first son, Prayagraj. Prabhupada had 3 sons, Prayagraj, Mathura Mohan, and Vrindavan Das. Vrindavan Das's daughter was the wife of Sujitendriya Prabhu. You may know him in Mayapur. He's Srila Jayapataka Swami Maharaj's LGBC, Srila Jayapataka Swami Maharaj's preferred translator. And they have quite a relationship. And he's a very good translator. So his wife, she's left her body. She left her body in a flood in Mayapur 15 years ago, in a flood in Ganga in Mayapur. There's a whole story, his family. So she was the granddaughter of Prabhupada. Yeah, Prabhupada's granddaughter. And her daughter is there in Mayapur now. Her daughter, so Prabhupada's great-granddaughter is in Mayapur. She's just growing up. She's about 18 or 20 years old now. So in Prayag, Prabhupada already had a son and a daughter. Lakshmana, a daughter, was born. And Prabhupada, he taught her the Bengali translation of Gurvastikam. Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur's Gurvastikam, which we chant in Mangalati time. Gurvastikam, the Bengali translation he taught her when she was a young child in Prayag. And then one day, in the pharmacy, Prabhupada had his pharmacy there, and he was connected to a physician there, and like that, they were working together. And one day, sannyasi, and I think that was, if it was Bhakti Sharanga Maharaj or Puri Maharaj, and with a couple of brahmacharis, they came into the pharmacy. We're looking for Abai Babu. We heard that these are pious Bengali, Abai Babu. We're from Gaudiya Math, and we are trying to open a center here in Prayag. And we heard that you will help us. Oh, yes. This is the servants of Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Oh, yes. So then Prabhupada again connected with Gaudiya Math preachers and began to participate in the establishment of the Rupa Gaudiya Math in Prayag. I think that was in 1925. He met them. And he would help them with the collection and introduce them to various businessmen in Prayag. Prabhupada was well connected in the business network. And so he helped a lot. And then in 1932, Atulananda Brahmachari, the president of the center there, they didn't have the temple not established, but they had center there. He said that Guru Maharaj is coming to Vrindavan on the parikrama. That was the beginning of we do the jatras, Tirtha Jatra in ISKCON. It's a popular thing for many devotees. Many devotees, the Tirtha Jatra is what sustains their spiritual life, annual Tirtha Jatra. This is started by Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. They'd never seen such a thing. Thousands of devotees doing parikrama of Braja Mandal. That was the full Braja Mandal parikrama, which we do in ISKCON also. Takes a month. So he was doing that. And Tulananda gave Prabhupada the schedule and everything. And then Prabhupada, he was busy with his pharmacy, and he would travel from Allahabad all over North India. In the unreserved, Prabhupada would just go to the station and get on the train, unreserved seat. And Prabhupada liked that, traveling, and he liked that. You imagine Prabhupada traveling on a train in those years? Those fortunate people that would be in the cabin with Prabhupada. We hear that he would stay and take his cold bath early in the morning. So then Prabhupada was able to go for one day from Prayag, take the train to Mathura, and then he took the rickshaw to the place of Koshi, which is the treasury of Nanda Maharaj. And they were there that evening, camped. And Prabhupada saw the hundreds of tents. All in the middle was the tent of the deity, they're carrying the deities, Radha Krishna deities, and the tent of Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And then around that were the tents of the sannyasis, and then around that the tents of the other devotees, the congregational devotees, followers of Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. The men all camped in one area, the ladies camped in another area. And Prabhupada went at the office, registered, and they gave him a place to go and stay. And then one sannyasi made an announcement that tonight, this evening, we're going to the Darshan, Kshirodakshai Vishnu Mandir. Or you can all come. The devotee said, Haribol, Haribol. And he said, and also Guru Maharaj will be here this evening. He'll be speaking. Those who want to remain can remain. But most people went for the temple darshan. And Prabhupada was thinking, oh, I haven't come to just go and take darshan of the deity, which I can do any time. I've come to hear again from the lotus lips of Guru Maharaj. Prabhupada was so conversant. He was reading the books already. He was conversant in the Goswami Siddhanta, Bhagavat Siddhanta. Stane stitam srutikatam tanavan mano ye prayasha ajita jito apayashita istrilokyam. Stane stita. You stay, you don't have to give up your position. Stane stita srutikatam. Srutikatam, the path of hearing. Tan vano mano bir, my glories, when you hear. From the lips of the Sat Mukaridam Bhavadiya Bhartum, Sat Mukaritam, from the Mukha, from the mouth of the Sat, from the person who has actually applied the principles of Krishna consciousness in their life, the Sat, Sadhu, Sat Mukaritam, hearing from their lips, Sat Mukaridam Bhavadiya Bhartum, about me, Bhavadiya Bhartum, hearing my glories from the lips of a person who has dedicated their life in the service of the Lord. Yai prayasho, that effort, yai ajita ajito, the unconquerable one becomes conquered. Ajita ajito, api ashita aishtrilokyam, and there's no other way of conquering him within the three worlds. So Prabhupada, I've come to hear from Guru Maharaj. So Prabhupada was sitting, listening. And he said there wasn't many people there. Some of the leading sannyasis were there. And Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur preaching. And sit and preach. He would, you don't have to prepare seminars, this and that. He just sits and begins speaking. And he opens his heart and all. He said he was speaking sometimes in Bangla, sometimes in Hindi, sometimes in English, or whatever he felt like. And Prabhupada said he couldn't understand everything. Prabhupada said couldn't understand everything. But what he did catch, Prabhupada said, had such an effect on him. Prabhupada said was like he had so much realization hearing that one class. It changed his whole, Prabhupada said, changed his whole perception of reality. He said, like opening a curtain. Just hearing that one class. He said, opening a curtain and revealing it. We could say Prabhupada, we could say that like such a deep realization, hearing one class. And how much it deepened and enriched already established relationship from 10 years before when he had first met, which he was always remembering. And so just see that such a qualified disciple and guru. I mean, we're listening every day to class, and you can hear your spiritual master every day if you like on the social media. You listen every day to the class. But because we're so dull-headed, still the message doesn't enter the heart. But hearing the two classes in 10 years. And after that, he was inflamed in his desire to serve Krishna. And then he got the news from Atulananda that Guru Maharaj is coming to Prayag. He's coming to Prayag. Prabhupada felt that this is really Krishna. Krishna really is showing kindness upon me. Brahmanda Brahmate Kona Bhagyavan Jeev. Brahmanda Brahmate Kona Bhagyavan Jeev. Guru Krishna Prasad Pai Bhakti Lota Bij. Guru Krishna Prasad. Prabhupada was feeling that statement of Chaitanya Charitamrita was manifesting in his life. Guru Krishna Prasad. This Guru Maharaj is coming. He really felt that Krishna is really opening all of the avenues for me now to progress very rapidly in spiritual life. So, and Atulananda mentioned that there will also be an initiation ceremony. Prabhupada immediately desirous of taking initiation from Sanatana Saraswati Thakur. He discussed with his wife, Radharani. She was not inclined to take initiation, but she had no objection, Prabhupada taking initiation. So on that day, he went to the temple which he had personally helped to establish, Sri Rupa Mott. You can visit in Prayag. Of course, you should visit. It's Jaishtan Vaishnav Korin Bijay Shaishtan Hoy Oti Purna Tirtha Moy. I was thinking yesterday, I should have mentioned when I spoke yesterday, but after I spoke, I neglected to mention. Jaishtan Hoy Vaishnav Korin Bijay, the place where the Vaishnav performs his pastimes, and such a special Bijay, the victorious pastimes. Shaishtan Hoy Oti Purna Tirtha Moy. Extremely purified place of pilgrimage. Yesterday we were in Hyderabad, Abid's temple, Radha Madanohan deity, where Prabhupada personally established the temple to perform the Vyasa Puja. So such a holy place and such a special occasion to perform Vyasa Puja at such a place. I felt so honored. So the place where Prabhupada received initiation. And there he went in the morning with his brother. And so Prabhupada had his children at that time. Prabhupada had 5 children altogether, 3 sons, 2 girls. So I'm not sure exactly at that time, but at least two of the sons were born. Maybe 1 or 2 of the daughters. So they were at home, and Radharani was at home, but Prabhupada went with his brother. Atulananda, he introduces Abhay Babu to Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Abhay Babu is interested to take initiation. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he sees him, he says yes. He likes to hear. He doesn't go away. I have marked him. Prabhupada said that he felt such joy, he'd never felt such happiness in his life. That to receive that affirmation, to receive that appreciation from such an exalted Vaishnava. Prabhupada felt so joyful. He felt so ecstatic that I mean, to get appreciation from such a great soul. And it captured Prabhupada. His heart was just melted. At that moment, he just felt so overwhelmed with spiritual joy and happiness and attachment to Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So that day Prabhupada accepted the Vaishnava initiation. Unusually, which the devotees had not seen before, he received the first and second initiation at the same time. First and second initiation. And he received his name was Abhay Charan Day. Abhay Charan. So he received the name Abhay Charan Arabinda Das. Abhay Charan Arabinda Das. He was initiated, first and second initiation. And Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur also instructed Prabhupada to study Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So then Prabhupada being initiated, he had his business. It was called Prayag Pharmacy. Prayag Pharmacy. And but then at that time he regularly began associating, after taking initiation, the newly established mott, which he had personally helped to fund. And Prabhupada regularly, you can imagine, Abhay Babu coming, Abhay Charan Adabin, and he would give classes, he would lead kirtan in the temple, he would do programs, preaching programs, as any initiated devotee would do. This is in 1933. then after some time, so then there was problems with the business in Prayag. As we can regularly see in Prabhupada's life, regularly he had problems with the business. A regular, recurring phenomena. Regularly there was reverses in the business. Yasyaham anugrinami harishe tad dhanam shanai tado dhanam tadat jasha sajanam dukadukitam. Bhagavatam verse. Prabhupada says that this, he felt that this is directly describing his circumstance. Yashaham anugrina, those who I particularly show mercy to. Yashaham anugrina harishe tad dhanam, I take away their wealth. Harishe tad dhanam shanai, gradually I take away all their wealth. Tado dhanam tajat jasha. And in this way the family members, they reject that person. Sajana dukha dukitam, and he just one depressed situation after another in terms of the material life, and then in this way they have no alternative but to take full shelter of me. For those who I show special mercy to. So actually, many of the people that Prabhupada, many of the customers that Prabhupada had given credit to, were not fulfilling the debts, and so Prabhupada, he was actually quite significantly in debt. And it became quite a problem. And Kartik Bose came, and they were discussing, and it was like an investigation. I guess you call that an accountant. You know, they do accounts of the books and everything. Everything was in order, and you could see that there was any discrepancy, but the people weren't coming forward with the payments that were due. And Prabhupada wasn't able to acquire those. He wasn't able to. So Kartik Bose discussed, what's the thing to do? We have to recuperate. I can't manage such a debt. I can't manage the company and carry such a debt. So then, I guess you call that liquidating liquidating, and all the assets were then given to Kartik Bose or whatever chemical, whatever stores were there were all taken over, and in this way the debt was covered. But Prabhupada lost the business, so he was out of business then in Prayag. He lost that business. And then Prabhupada went to Mumbai. We have to research all of these places, probably it's written there where he set up a business in Mumbai. And the family, I believe the family was in Prayag still. And Prabhupada went to Mumbai with his brother, and then they set up a business. Mumbai was a very developing place then, 1935. And then Prabhupada, there was Vyasa Puja, and he wrote the poetry. So Prabhupada at that time he'd already, in English language, Prabhupada had been, at the first meeting, in English language you should preach. So then Prabhupada wrote the homage in English, a poem. Prabhupada wrote poetry. Prabhupada wrote English poetry. He wrote Bengali. Prabhupada, he would write poetry. On the Jaladuta, Prabhupada wrote 2 poems. As approaching America and the Atlantic Ocean, he wrote the poem, Martin, and then he wrote the poem upon arrival in Boston Harbor. Wrote a poem. And you read that poem, should be studied in Gurukul actually. That poem should be studied and memorized by Gurukulis, and that poem. So significant. There's moments, crucial moments, significant moments. How does a Vaishnava, Prabhupada writes poetry? It's so charming, for what better word we could, so charming, such a attractive person, so charismatic, such divine qualities. He wrote a poem. There's so much in the mode of goodness. We're also rajarsi, we're just running, busy. Who's got time to write a poem at a special moment? You're arriving in America, Prabhupada writes the poem. So he wrote the poem. He wrote many poems of Prabhupada. You can study the poems of Srila Prabhupada. He wrote the poems in Vrindavan Biraha. Biraha Astika, another poem he wrote in Vrindavan when he first went to reside in Vrindavan. So he wrote the poem for Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's glorification, Vyasa Puja. He wrote the poem. And 2 lines of that poem particularly attracted the attention of Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Absolute is sentient, thou hast proved. Impersonal calamity thou hast moved. Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur read the poem. When he read those 2 lines, he was very appreciative. He felt that this disciple has understood my mood. Oh, this is amazing. It's like the Akashvani. One flower fell down before when I was doing the Prema Noni. One flower, another one falling down. Over the next few days, we're going to be showered with the prasad of Janmashtami decorations. Gradually, they're falling down. So transcendental. Such a special temple. Absolute is sentient, thou hast proved. Impersonal calamity, thou hast moved. Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, so much like that. He would show, people would come and visit. He would say, look what my disciple has written. He would show. And in this way, Prabhupada more and more endeared to Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So then, at that time, Prabhupada wrote a letter to Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, shortly before he wrote a letter about asking, he was explaining how I am a householder and I'm not like a sannyasi that can fully engage in your miss, and so what is your order for me? Yesterday I read part of that poem in my homage. I'm just reflecting now, but I have great hope that you can become a very wonderful English preacher, he wrote in that letter. And then there was the other meeting also in Radha Kund. Prabhupada went again and saw Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur in Radha Kund, and he had his son Vrindavan. And at that time, Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, if you ever get money, print books. He said, there'll be a fire in the mutt. If you ever get money, print books. So these are the last instructions Prabhupada received from Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Prabhupada said personally, I met my spiritual master about 12 times, he said, about a dozen times. So he would come to Kolkata, when Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was there. He would go to Mayapur. There was one incident in Chaitanya Math where Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was on the balcony and Prabhupada was in the courtyard and he saw a snake. And Prabhupada called out to his godbrothers. They came, they didn't know what to do. And then Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur from the balcony, he said, kill the snake. So in that way, Prabhupada, he said about 12 times he would come to Mayapur sometimes. How many times Prabhupada saw him, Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur in Mayapur, not sure, but he would come on occasion to Mayapur. And in Kolkata, and he would, they would come and pick up Abhay Charan Aravinda Das from Howrah station and pick him up in a horse and carriage and take him to Bagh Bazaar Mandir, and Prabhupada would stay a week or so in the guest rooms in Bagh Bazaar Mandir in Kolkata and associate with Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So there were many, and Prabhupada said sometimes he would sit with Guru Maharaj and chant in chanting japa in the room. Other disciples wouldn't do that, and others would chastise Prabhupada. Oh, you think you can be so intimately associated with Guru Maharaj, but Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur would welcome Prabhupada, and they would be together alone on several occasions. And so then Prabhupada got that letter in 1936, just a few weeks before Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur departed. I think that was the end of 1936, 1st of January. 1st of January, on the evening, end of 1936, morning of 36, I think it must be. The clocks in the Bagh Bazaar Mandir stopped. And then they brought Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur in a train to Krishna Nagar from Kolkata, and they put him in Samadhi in Chaitanya Math in Mayapur. You can all visit his Samadhi there. So then Prabhupada was greatly aggrieved, bereft of his beloved spiritual master, with whom he was connected and gave him the mission in life. 1935 in Mumbai, and Prabhupada was in Mumbai for 2 or 3 years, business there, but that also wasn't going so successfully, so Prabhupada relocated again back to Kolkata, 1938. Back to Kolkata. He rented 2 apartments in Shita Kanta Banerjee Lane. Who's been there? Yeah, no one's been there. I haven't been there either. I'm planning and we'll go next time in Kolkata. Shita Kanta Banerjee Lane. It's not far from the center, Bagh Bazaar Temple. Prabhupada could see Bagh Bazaar Temple from the roof of his place, Sitakanta Banerjee Lane. So he rented number 6 and 7, Sitakanta Banerjee Lane, and he was living in number 6. bottom floor, second floor. And in number 7 on the bottom, he set up a factory. And he was making medicine, Day's liniment. And Prabhupada had a pamphlet that he would distribute. And he was Day's liniment, good for rheumatism, gout, and all other ailments. And on the pamphlet, Prabhupada said also one should refrain from meat, fish, eggs, intoxicants, and tea and coffee on the pamphlet for selling Day's liniment. Prabhupada would use that for his marketing, his products. He would make distilled water, and that was purchased wholesale by chemical factories, distilled water. It was a big industry at that time. At that time in India, the allopathic medicine was a big industry. Prior to that, it was the Ayurvedic medicine and the village remedies. Ayurvedic means making medicine from the bushes and the trees and that grow in the village. They're making medicine, Ayurvedic. So the Western medicine, allopathic medicine that had come to India, that was like a big business, big developing industry. Prabhupada was in industry. He was selling, wholesaling chemicals, product. He was producing in the laboratory. He employed 3 assistants. And Prabhupada employed 3 assistants to produce his products. 1938. Now, at that time, the Gaudiya Math had disbanded. The Gaudiya Math had, shortly after the departure of Srila Sri Thakur, leading disciples began to contest ownership of the properties. We can describe briefly, but you can read everything in great detail. Bhakti Prakash Swami Maharaj's book describes in somewhat detail. Lila Amrita describes in detail. There were two factions. One faction was by Ananta Vyasadeva. Ananta Vyasadeva was such a special devotee. Ananta Vyasadeva, he was so qualified, scholar from East Bengal, Bangladesh. Became a devotee young man. Gave his life brahmachari, and he was an assistant. He was such a close associate of Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, such a learned scholar. He contributed, he assisted in writing the books. Some say that many things he actually was writing, many of the books. He was a major contributor to the books of Siddhanta. Very learned scholar. Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur would be he would say the verse, and Ananta Vyasadeva would quote the verse with the reference. The pranam mantras of Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the pranam mantras, the 3 pranam mantras, they were composed spontaneously on a Vyasa Puja festival by Ananta Vyasadeva. He stood up and composed those in Sanskrit, which we're chanting in English. We're chanting in ISKCON, Ananta Vyasadeva. And he was inspired with the preaching, and he had so many of the disciples were his followers, and he was the preaching, was carrying on with the preaching. So that was one side. The other side was Bhaktivilas Tirtha Maharaj. He didn't have as many followers, but he had properties. This Chaitanya Math in Vrindavan, in Mayapur, Chaitanya Math. This is you'll see Bhakti, he was the Acharya of Chaitanya Math, and Chaitanya Math the Chaitanya Math is actually the main Gaudiya Math, and they have the temples in Mayapur, Chaitanya Math, and they had the Bhag Bazaar. So he had the properties. He went after the properties. Prabhupada said he went after properties, and he was an experienced man. He was mainly in the mission. He was mainly the administrator, and Ananta Vyasadeva, you could say into the Brahminical, educational, developing aspects, and Ananta and Bhaktivilas Tirtha Maharaj was the Kunja Babu, was mainly administration, organization. So he was able to capture a lot of the properties. So these 2 groups formed, and they were fighting in the courts, and different cases from different courts. One court awarded properties to Ananta Vyasadeva, another court to and then, unfortunately, Ananta Vyasadeva, he gave up his sannyas and got married, which is an extraordinary thing. He got married. So then, that further disturbed everything. So then, therefore, you end up with what we kind of ended up in the modern times, that many branches established then, many branches. When Ananta Vyasadeva gave up the sannyas, then many of his followers, so they were more into the preaching, everything separated and they all just set up their own separate mutts. So therefore you have like that, the Chaitanya Mutt is still major properties, and then so many other small Gaudiya mutts. Now Prabhupada was very disappointed seeing all this, but Prabhupada considered that he also met disciples in Mumbai. I didn't mention that. We'll go back to that in Mumbai, 1935. And Srila Swami had come to Mumbai with the Bhakti Saranga Maharaj and another sannyasi, and they were setting up, they were first Gaudiya Mutt in Mumbai, and Prabhupada helped them also. Prabhupada was well connected and helping them, and Prabhupada would arrange preaching programs for Srila Maharaj. Prabhupada would play mridanga. Prabhupada would also give the class preaching in Mumbai. And at that time, after they opened the center in Mumbai, that center must still be there, Gaudiya Mutt in Mumbai, Bhakti Sharanga Maharaj, he said to Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur that our boy Charan Arabinda Das has contributed so much, he's such an expert, we should make him the temple president of the Mutt in Mumbai. And Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, no, it's better that he's living outside of your association. When the time comes, he will do it. When the time comes, he will do everything himself. Prabhupada ki. So Prabhupada, after seeing what happened when Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur left, Prabhupada felt that it was his advantage that he wasn't actually connected, he wasn't living in the mutt. He didn't have any position. He didn't have any institutional role in the... Because if he had of, then he would have been obliged to take one side or other. But because he wasn't in any position, and as Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, it's better he's living outside your company. It's so prophetic, the words. Because then Prabhupada he was under no obligation to take sides when everything was falling apart and there was the war going on in the Gaudiya Mutt. So then others were also independent. Srila Maharaj, Srila Swami, he had an ashram in Navadip, Devananda Gaudiya Mutt. It's still there, you can visit Devananda Gaudiya Mutt, Srila Maharaj temple in Navadip. You can see if you go to the Navadip station, it's just a short distance from Navadip station, Devananda Gaudiya Mutt. And so some sannyasis had met Prabhupada in his home in Sitakanta Banerjee Lane, and then they mentioned about they wanted to start preaching in Calcutta, or a center in Calcutta for preaching. So Prabhupada said, he rented the 4 rooms in the adjacent building. He renting the 2 apartments. There's number 6, number 7. So number 7 on the first floor, number 7, Prabhupada had his chemical factory. He was producing those products. And he rented above 4 rooms, above number 7, he rented that to his godbrothers, 3 sannyasis, who wanted a permanent ashram in Calcutta for their preaching in Calcutta. That's Srila Swami Maharaj, Bhakti Sharanga Swami Maharaj, and Puri Maharaj. There's 3 sannyasis, and so they would regularly drop by, spend time in Calcutta. The brahmacharis would stay there. And Prabhupada was living next door, number 6, with his family. And Prabhupada, he would take his meals at home and do puja at home, and he was initiated, Prabhupada doing his bhajan. And occasionally Prabhupada would spend time with his godbrother sannyasis. When they were visiting Calcutta, they would discuss, and they spent time together for several years. Srila Swami Maharaj, Prabhupada developed a great relationship with Srila Swami Maharaj from the time they first met in Mumbai until later when he was residing in Calcutta, and Srila Maharaj had his ashram. And Prabhupada, we could say that Srila Swami Maharaj is perhaps the closest connected godbrother that Prabhupada had. He was very closely connected to Srila Swami Maharaj. And Prabhupada, at that time, they worked on a publication together. Prabhupada helped fund that publication of writings of Srila Swami Maharaj in Calcutta at that time. And Prabhupada was very experienced in publishing. because of his business. Prabhupada had experience in publishing. He would publish pamphlets, he knew the printers. So then Prabhupada, his godbrothers were all immersed in the fighting and wrangling over the properties, and Prabhupada was just lamenting, the mission of Guru Maharaj, and well, let me try something. And Prabhupada began writing in English. He began writing his translation for Bhagavad Gita as it is. 1938 onwards, 1930. So he'd completed the introduction to Bhagavad Gita as it is, and in 1939 he entitled that Gita Upanishad. And hearing that, reading that, seeing that work, his godbrothers were so impressed with Prabhupada's erudition as an English preacher, as an English writer, that they awarded upon him the title Bhakti Vedanta. 1939, and Prabhupada appreciated that, and he accepted that, and subsequently he introduced himself as A.C. Bhaktivedanta Prabhu. In 1939, into the title Bhaktivedanta. Then the war, there was the Second World War, 1940. 1943, there was the famine, the Great Famine, and many people were starving on the streets of Kolkata. Prabhupada sent his sons, 3 sons, to Navadip. One daughter was married, another daughter not sure whether she was in Kolkata or went to Navadip, maybe Navadip with the brothers. Prabhupada, his wife, she refused to leave Kolkata in 1944. Prabhupada is in Kolkata. The British are there. The British have their airfields in Kolkata, and Americans also army base, and they're flying Kolkata. They're bombing Japan and places of Burma. The Japanese occupied Burma, Myanmar. They almost invaded Bengal. They may have, but anyway, the war went as it went. Prabhupada was in Kolkata. The Kolkata was being bombed. Who's been in the city and they're being bombed by fighter bombers? Who's been in such a situation? Prabhupada, not an ordinary character, no, the ordinary life, even materially speaking, the things that Prabhupada had witnessed, none of us would ever see. The things that Prabhupada witnessed in his life. Prabhupada witnessed one Gunda stabbing another Gunda in Kolkata. Who's seen that? Who's seen someone being murdered? Who's seen that? Prabhupada has seen the riots, Hindu-Muslim riots in Kolkata. He's been there, involved. He's seen the bodies piled up on the streets, burning, piled up in hundreds. Who's seen such things? Prabhupada experienced. He grew up in Kolkata. He describes that in the college days, many of his fellow students were from the village, and they were all awestruck by the foreigners. And Prabhupada, he wasn't. He'd seen so many foreigners growing up in Kolkata. He'd seen the foreigners. He was walking one morning with Tamal Krishna Maharaj and Gargamuni in the Victoria Monument, built for Queen Victoria, the Queen of England. They in Kolkata. The Victoria Monument, I'm sure you've seen. Prabhupada liked it. Actually, he indicated a TOVP, something like Victoria Monument in Kolkata, when you go and see. He would walk, it's not far from our temple. The first temple in India is Albert Road, Kolkata. 3C Albert Road, ISKCON's first temple. Radha Govinda, installed by Prabhupada. Radha Govinda, Mahaprabhu. And Prabhupada was walking, and they would walk morning walk, Victoria Monument. And Prabhupada, he said to the devotees, in my younger days, as a young man, I climbed onto the top. They were doing the renovation of the scaffolding with the bamboo. Prabhupada said, I climbed up to the top. Who's climbed to the top of Victoria Monument in this assembly? Well, so many experiences, Prabhupada, such a character. And such an experienced man. And the devotees, they said, oh, Prabhupada, you were so brave. They said, Prabhupada, you were so brave then. And Prabhupada stopped, put his cane in the ground and said, I am still brave. Of course, going alone. Pennsylvania, the Prabhupada going alone. A whole nother, we could speak for Prabhupada arriving in America. He walked down what's that called? The gangway off the boat. He didn't know which way to turn, left or right. He came to America. Somehow he managed to get to America. That's a whole nother epic, how he managed to get to America. Walked down the gangway, now what? and the Agarwal, what was his name? Gopal Agarwal, he had arranged. They were shocked. The Sali Agarwal, the Swami is coming next week. He's coming. Gopal Agarwal, what? They hosted him in the YMCA, and he sent a Traveler's Aid, a representative from Traveler's Aid, to meet Prabhupada at the gangway, and put him on the bus to go to Butler, where in the middle of the night he arrived, and Gopal Agarwal. So Prabhupada is arriving in America on his own. In ISKCON, everything's so easy for us. You met at the airport with a garland and the devotees who drive you in a nice car. Yeah, nice. Have several vehicles. Bring you to which apartment you want to stay in, Prabhu. This one, that one, this one. So easy for us. We think we're big preachers. So yeah, no difficulties we face. Prabhupada, every step, such difficulties he overcame. So they were bombing, and Calcutta was bombing. And Prabhupada, he writes about that on several occasions in his books, the sound of the bombs. And in Calcutta, bombing. And at that time, what did Prabhupada do under the circumstances? What did he do? He was thinking, oh, now is the time for serving. Now is the time for serving the order of the spiritual master, who instructed me to preach the teachings of Lord Chaitanya in English. So Prabhupada, he began sitting in his room in Sita Kanta Banerjee Lane, number 7, in the bottom floor. He was sitting there. The neighbors they commented that they would see Abai. He would be sitting there. They would hear him reading the books of his spiritual master, and he would chant the Sanskrit verses aloud. And they would see him, and anyone would come, he would always be discussing philosophy, any simple matter. He would always refer to Bhagavad Gita. Any discussion, and he didn't talk much about business, but anytime anyone met him, he would always be talking about philosophy and Krishna consciousness, Bhagavad Gita. In that room, it was like his little bhajan kutir, bottom floor, number 7. We want to visit that place, number 7, Sita Kanta Banerjee Lane. We're trying to get it. We won't say now, but we're not meant to say these things because price will go up. But devotees in Kolkata, Sita Kanta Banerjee Lane, Prabhupada, sometimes he would dress in a dhoti and a vest. A Nehru vest and a dhoti. Prabhupada would dress like that. So sitting in that room, Prabhupada conceived of Back to Godhead magazine. And sitting there alone. It's so easy for us. I mean, every day there's so many devotees, there's so many seminars, there's so many... I regularly get this ISKCON connection. It comes in my mail. Last night I got one. What the devotees are doing all over the world. You hear everything, all of the great achievements. It's so encouraging. We're so much carried on by the association of the devotees with so much support. You may not do so many amazing things, but you can help so many amazing things that are going on. There's so much opportunity. It's so easy for us to give our lives to serving Krishna. There's so much service opportunity in ISKCON. Prabhupada is nothing. He's nothing. He's on his own. And he was saying, oh, my godbrothers, the sannyasis, they're not making a regular publication magazine, a journal. Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he wrote English journal. He wrote many languages, Hindi, Bangla, Odia, English publications. The Harmonist is English publications. He was publishing in English. Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the Harmonist. And at that time, after Prabhupada wrote the poem, in 1935, Vyasa Puja, Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur turned to the editors of the Harmonist, said, whatever he writes, publish it. Prabhupada ki. So Prabhupada's thinking, my godbrothers, no one's writing in English, no one's, let me. In the time, Calcutta's bombed, at that time. Prabhupada's sitting there, he's writing, typing and writing. So he first, the title page he conceived of, Back to Godhead, the title, Back to Godhead. And the logo, we say the logo, the title page. There's Mahaprabhu there and with the effulgence, and over on the other side, on the left corner, on the right bottom corner is conditioned souls, different people, householders, and different. You can see they're there, ladies, men, young kids, in their darkness, in the clouds. They're reaching. Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's picture in the corner, with his pen writing, and like a banner unfolding. Prabhupada so artistic. Like a banner unfolding back to Godhead. Written under the direct order of His Divine Grace, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, by Abhay Charan Arvind Bhaktivedanta Prabhu, Bhaktivedanta Das. You can see those first back to Godheads. They're there. You can see the pictures they have of those in the Lilamrita. And then Prabhupada, he had experience in publishing, so he knew. He went to Saraswati Printers, the most renowned publishers in Bengal. And he was able to get a contract with them to publish Back to Godhead magazine. He envisaged a fortnightly magazine, Back to Godhead. First edition was 44 pages. Some other godbrothers also contributed articles. Bhakti Sharanga Maharaj contributed an article. And Prabhupada was writing. You can read all the articles. They're all there. You can read the Prabhupada's Back to Godhead early articles. They're all there in the archives, published. And Prabhupada had to go and he had to fight to get the paper. At the time of the war, the paper was restricted. And Prabhupada, first publication, he had to go and he had to write, no, at this time people need spiritual inspiration. This is more important now than any other time. Everyone in the whole world is facing such trauma, such suffering. Millions of people, by 1944 already, millions of people had given their lives in the World War. All over the world, the Japanese, the Germans, the British, the Allies, even the Russians, so many, everyone involved in it. Now is the time. So Prabhupada was able to convince them. And then he published and he distributed Back to Godhead magazine. And then second edition also, no, he cannot get the paper. We're not providing the paper. Prabhupada began writing to the government officials. Can you believe it? So anyone, we say, oh well, we tried my best, but no, not possible at this time. But unstoppable. There's nothing can stop. Such a empowered, so committed, so determination is unfathomable determination to fulfill the order of the spiritual. Prabhupada's on his own. It's not that he's got a whole, line of authority above to give support, and so many people below who are expecting, and so much support, we have to do something. He's on his own. There's no one who would care if he just says, oh, I tried my best, forget it. I tried, but I can't get the paper anymore. Who would care? No one would say anything. No one here doesn't have to give a report. No one would say anything. But Prabhupada, unstoppable. Such personal, such commitment. Unstoppable. He wrote several letters to the government officials. He wrote that in the ancient India, the great sages would offer volumes and volumes of ghee in the sacrifice for the benefit of humanity. And at that time we see there was no scarcity in the people. So providing paper now for spreading the message of Godhead, such a sacrifice that will benefit the whole of humanity. He convinced the government officers. He convinced them. He was allocated, able to make the next edition of the Back to Godhead magazine, and in this way began publishing it and carrying on with the writing. And then after that, he published 2 editions of Back to Godhead, but his funds didn't have funds for subsequently publishing. Prabhupada all the time was carrying on with his translation of Bhagavad Gita, Gita Upanishad, translating it, 1,200 pages. In the first edition, he mentions that soon there will be the publication of the Gita Upanishad in English with purports and references to all the Vaishnavacharyas. Prabhupada was working on that manuscript. We'll just jump ahead a little bit. I think it was 7 years later, mid-50s or early 50s in Madurai. In Madurai, Prabhupada was there for business. Madurai. Did he come to Prabhupada? Did he come to Hyderabad business? I don't know, but anyway, traveling all the way to Madurai, South India, on the train for business. And he met another chemical agent, Mr. I think Chetty. And he was employed by what they call the Birla of the South, forgetting his name now, Agrippa, or something like that. Agrippa, a big wealthy man, and you can Google him. He's famous. And so this Mr. Shetty, he approached and said, "Look at this Abai is Bhagavad Gita," and so he was willing to sponsor the publication of Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita in the early 1950s. And Prabhupada was going to come to Madurai, so Prabhupada went to Calcutta to get the manuscript stolen, or lost, or who knows. That first translation of Bhagavad Gita lost 1,200 pages, so who knows. So he's unable to publish. So time has completed. We'll conclude today with some sharing. I thank you for the opportunity. To discuss some Prabhupada Leela in such exalted association, such dear servitors of Srila Prabhupada who have taken the mission of Sankirtan so seriously. And we can feel Prabhupada's presence so much in this temple. He's sitting, Prabhupada's presence in this deity here, very powerful, feel his presence. So it's a great joy for me to be able to discuss Prabhupada's pastimes in your association. And I pray for such opportunity again in the future. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.